Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. Howard Greenberg, your host here to talk to you a little bit about Bitcoin. We're going to do a little bit of a more in-depth look at it. First thing I'm going to do, though, before we start there is take a look at the markets. And it's been pretty ugly, you know. S&P now down about 1.75% for the day. Sort of went into that zone of support here that I was looking at on the daily chart earlier with Steve. We're at the bottom of the daily linear regression here. I felt that we might see a little pullback there till we actually start to see a turnaround. And that tends to be the case, it looks like. Same thing, QQQ. NASDAQ looking pretty weak towards lows of the day here, 448.62. And you can see it's losing its support here also. So, you know, pretty ugly on a daily chart look here. So far, Dow Jones average, industrial average down about 1%. I do see a little support a little bit below us here on that. Some of the main culprits leading to this today, Tesla down 7.21%. Here we can see it is running into a support zone on the S&R channel here. Should get some support right around 212 or so. So something to take a look at. But you got downward side to 206 here. If we see a reversal off this pivot point, you're looking for about 228, 229 in that realm. Nvidia, another one getting beat pretty bad today. Down about 4.62. Staying on the chip side, AMD also down about 4.37%. Intel down about 2.84%. AVGO has been a big loser here, down close to 10%. Qualcomm down at about 3.6. Another one coming towards a support level, though, here, so might want to watch Qualcomm over here over today or Monday. SMCI continuing to get beat, drop below the lows we saw here. I'm seeing downside all the way. Still down to 365 or so. So you still got room there to drop. Definitely not a pretty look there. Apple down about a point here. And again, rejected right off the same level as yesterday. What we saw is really most things were unable to get above yesterday's highs. Not much setting newer highs today. So that seems to be the story so far. Okay. Do see a couple of winners so far today. Guidewire Software moved up on guidance today, so they had good earnings. Jumped up from about 145 or so, 143, up to a current level 160. Did get as high as 171 before dropping down. Another reporting good earnings was IoT, which is Samsara, another technology packaging software service who had some beats today. They blew away their EPS. They were expected to actually lose money, and they made money. So that helps out, obviously. And they beat their revenue by almost 4%. So IoT, those micro pumpers we were talking about yesterday with Charlie Moon, you got to look at these more on the hourly charts. You can see Bloom made that run yesterday, faded off, but today in pre-market hours, blew all the way up towards $2.85. Still up at 136, but you can see what we were talking about with these. You really don't want to get caught trying to chase these trades. If you're not in them on the open, you know, you got significant ability to lose. I mean, 9 o'clock it was trading, you know, $2.13, shot up to 281. If you got in at 10 o'clock, you know, up in this area, you've seen a pretty big drop from, you know, 280 to 190. So, you know, that's one thing with these micro pumpers. You got to watch. Same thing, Wheeler, very similar. Made the move yesterday, made another move today. early in the pre-hour, and that's been fading pretty much ever since. So again, there are some of these micro pumpers. Another one here on the finance side, beneficent, but overall, craziness all around that. What we're here to talk about a little bit today in more detail, quite honestly, is Bitcoin, crypto and Bitcoin. So since we're at Friday afternoon, as we know, crypto never sleeps. So it will be rocking and rolling all weekend. We figure it's a good time to take a look. And Bitcoin's struggling today. It's dropped down right now. It's trading at about 53,800, down about 4 points on the day. I will say this 53,800, it's sort of the key area you want to stay above. We need to have a close that's above 53. What we can see is this is the third attempt. What I've pointed out, though, is we are still in a bull flag, in my opinion. We made the big move up starting in the beginning of January. And we've seen these highs be retested on 3 or 4 occasions. And now we're seeing these lows be tested for the third time. So, you had your first test back here at the beginning of July. We had the second test here at the beginning of August. In fact, we had the one-day drop all the way down towards 50K. But I will point out again that we didn't have a close below 53. So that's the spot I'm still watching right now, is to make sure or see, are we going to have a close tonight above 53, and can we stay? If we do, then we still remain within this bull flag for me, and nothing really changes that. The bears haven't been able to break through this 53 yet and hold it. Like I said, they did last a few weeks ago, get it down temporarily on liquidations, but it shot back up. The other thing that I will, we're going to talk about a few things here, there is no doubt that there's a little bit of a downward bias here. We're off about 23%, 24% from the all-time highs at that 74K level almost. But I will point out that when you're talking about the world of Bitcoin, that isn't a big drawdown from, a new historical high. So we've seen drawdowns that have gone from 20 back to 4, over the years. So when you see this, not nearly in that level. I do think a big part of that is the change in the holders. You have a lot more institutional holders, whether they be the ETFs, BlackRock, GBTC, and others, along with MicroStrategy and Twitter and Tesla and other companies that are holding Bitcoin on their reserves. So you do have a little bit of different cohort of holders here that's a little bit more sophisticated, not as much retail. You also have seen a move into more of it being, the Western Hemisphere versus the Eastern Hemisphere. There was an outflow or an outsized amount of Asian whales during the last 2 runs up to all-time highs. What we've seen is a transfer of those holders, and that's sort of the money that's now moved into that institutional money. So you have that to take a look at. We haven't had that huge loss. A couple other things that I'll point out that are reasons that I'm still bullish is we've been watching whale wallets versus, regular size wallets. And what we tend to see is in times of what I would call mini capitulation, because we're not seeing mass selling. We haven't seen those huge, 20% drops in one day like we used to see in Bitcoin. We've seen a couple 5, 7, 8% moves here or there, but they've gone both ways. And we've been in a relatively, for Bitcoin, time of not really that much volatility. Again, if you go back from, mid-February, we crossed that $60,000 line, and we've traded up as high as 70 and down as low as 50, in that time frame. But we've spent most of the time, quite honestly, in this, area of between 57 and 63. So, I'm not worried about that at all. The second thing is only about 3% of the Bitcoin being held right now is in losses. A lot of it being short-time holders, the people that were buying back here when it was up at $60,000 and $70,000. So it's not a huge cohort. The short-term holders, they tend to capitulate, quite honestly, in general. Short-term holders in Bitcoin, let's say for every 100 people that get in for the first time into Bitcoin, buy it now. When they sell, probably 60% don't come right back because they had a bad experience. They bought at 70 during the hype, it comes down, and they stay away. They usually stay away until the next time it goes crazy, and then they, unfortunately follow back in there. What I like to do is look at Bitcoin and unrealized profits versus Bitcoin and realized profits to see, where's that pressure on the sell side? How bad does that capitulation look? And then another thing about that is, where is the point where we could see sell pressure on the way back up, as these holders that are in unrealized losses. And again, what I mean by an unrealized loss is if I bought Bitcoin at 60,000, and now it's at 53,788. If I bought one Bitcoin, I am down basically right now about $6,000, right? So that is my unrealized loss at this point. Where does that break-even point start to come through for this cohort that is down? It comes down at about 62.4, in that range right there. So I do think, as we get up here towards that area between 60 and 62.5, I think we will start to see some resistance into selling. So I will put that out there. I don't expect to see some kind of, slingshot effect off of this bottom today. I don't necessarily. You can see what it did here August 8th, where it did shoot up into that exact zone and then got knocked down, tried to work its way above, and now has worked back below. But, that is what I'm looking at here. And when we look at the short-term holder, MVRV, which is the market value versus the realized value, again, it's the difference between the current prices of Bitcoin and Bitcoin the last time it was moved. One would be equilibrium. We're down about 0.79 right now, and that's very similar to where we were in August of 2023. So I do want to point that out. So we're in a similar spot to right about here. So the question I sort of have, and you can sort of see that we had the bull go up, we had the flag come out. And on this one, we took a drop below the flag for a week or so until we moved ourselves back up. Are we going to see that type of movement again this time? Or will we see a bounce off the bottom of the flag? That's the question. I do think that if we drop below 53, we got to look at 50 as being the next key level where we rebounded here on, August 5th. So that's what I would be looking at there. The other thing that I will point out is, in mid-April, we had the last Bitcoin halving. It's where the miners' rewards are cut in half. When they are cut in half, it usually takes, people, again, this is usually a big capitulation area that we've seen over time. And the reason for that is that a lot of people buy into this hype, and about 6 to 7 months before the halving, we see a mini bull run usually. And what happens is, as we get close to the halving, or as we hit it, and there isn't all of a sudden the next move up that the people that were reading about how the supply chain is going to dwindle and all that, they capitulate. And that's a little bit what we're seeing here. It would have been around this time in April, and you can see in May we hit our high, right after the halving, and then we've kind of dropped off since. We've come in that pattern. Part of that is that capitulation of the speculation where people come in and they think that immediately that turns to price. It doesn't. It has historically taken 6 to 9 months for that shrinkage in the daily amount of Bitcoin created to, work its way through the supply and demand cycle and to really have an effect. So I really don't think, I think that we're going to hold up here, maybe get a dip down to 50, but that's about our range here until we get till, mid-August, and mid-October, and then that's when I'll start to look for Bitcoin to make its bigger move back up in general. So, another thing I wanted to do, you can see here in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, I've pulled up some on-chain metrics to take a look at. Another thing I thought that it would be important to talk about is the difference between perpetual future volume and spot volume in the Bitcoin market. because similar to what we are now seeing in the equity market, right, where these 0-day DTAs, these option speculators are buying a lot more options at huge amounts of volume compared to what they were doing, 4 or 5 years ago. That is really catching up to what Bitcoin and crypto has had as its tendencies since the start. So right here, I like this chart here from CoinGlass, and you're able to take a look and see the difference. And when I say that, what I mean is yesterday's Bitcoin on Binance, which is the largest exchange still in the world, based out of Hong Kong, and they do the most volume still out there. They did $2.25 billion in Bitcoin spot volume yesterday, but they did 20 billion in perpetual volume. And perpetual volume is basically leveraged perpetual futures. So you're betting on the price to either go up or down. It's not based on an expiry. So it's not based on a day to hit an expiry. It is an open-ended contract that traders use somewhere between 1x and even up to 100x. We do not recommend leverage. We do not recommend leverage. We do not recommend leverage at Quasar Market. But we do have to tell you what is out there. That is out there, and that's what people are basically using as an instrument to trade. I will tell you, I have been a big perpetual future trader, not at high leverage. I would normally be using 3 to 5x leverage myself, so similar to what you would find in a leveraged ETF for the SPY or for Tesla or another volatile equity. So in the similar way there, I was doing that a lot. Unfortunately, the U.S. government has made it harder for that to get done in the U.S. It isn't illegal for me to do it. It is, though, so far not allowed for a company to sell me the rights to do that. So we don't do that anymore. But around the world, it is still huge, and it's about 10 times the size. So it's not only important to look at what's going on in the spot market, but again, if you're looking down on that bottom right there, I'll have up a lot of times. If I'm looking at Bitcoin, this is what my charts will look like. I'll have my trading view chart up to one side, and to the other side, I'll be looking at Bitcoin futures. And this is what I mean when I talk about it when it comes to volume also. When you look, $7.44 billion in open interest on Bitcoin on CME right now, 6.61 on Binance. So a tremendous amount. What I tend to look for is the amount of open interest. So I'll be big on this chart, and when we see open interest really climb up, what that can do is lead to a lot more volatility. It doesn't mean I stop trading, but it means I'll be much closer on my stops and on my take profits, because liquidations can just hit so fast in this type of market. I was watching here liquidations earlier, and they were going fast and furious as Bitcoin was fighting to, try to break back above $54,000. It slowed down a little bit now. Let me pull up Bitcoin here. I know it's probably a little small on your screens, but in the bottom right-hand side, these are real-time liquidations. So the last liquidation was about $8,000 worth, and it was done on Binance. I know that because I know what the symbols are. That's Huboy. It was a Bitcoin, and it happened when Bitcoin was at 53,695, and we can see it was a green trade, so it was a long liquidation. What you'll see is if we go back here a little bit, they'll start to turn red, and the reds are actually liquidations of shorts. So like right here, these were shorts that were liquidated, and what happened was when we got that first drop down to that 53,450 level, we saw a quick bounce back, and a lot of these got liquidated pretty quickly. So, I take a look at this. I keep this information up. I can see, what are the liquidations? Where are they happening? And you can see that right now, 86.77% of all the liquidations happening are in longs over the last 4 hours. So, Bitcoin, one thing that you do get is you have the ability to get a lot of data in your hands that's instantaneous that you don't necessarily have in the equities markets without being, having a Bloomberg terminal or something at your hand. You sort of get the equivalency of those terminals right here through different sites like that we have on Quasar, like Coinalyze, like CoinGlass, CoinRoutes. There's a lot of different good ones. TradingView does a great job for charting and screeners when it comes to Bitcoin, along with news information. They cover that well. So, my takeaways again, if you're looking at Bitcoin right now, is that, we need to keep ourselves above 53K here at the close. So tonight when we close down, we need to be above that 53K. That's sort of my line in the sand right now. Any drop below 53K, and I would be playing to the short side down to 50. If we do bounce back up again, and I do think that's going to take more days, not minutes or hours, until we see an appreciable move up. When we do see that, be sure that you are being careful as we go between 60K and 62.5, as that will be a zone where I think some of the short-term cohorts that did buy and are sitting at a loss will look to sell and take some profits. Well, not take profits, but not have as extensive a loss as they do today. So that is my longer-term look here at Bitcoin. We'll be doing this again, like I said, once a week, most likely on Friday afternoons. And thank you so much for joining me. My name again is Howard Greenberg. I am the host of Quasar Markets Live. I should also mention I am the president of the American Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Association, hence my my swing towards the crypto trade. Folks, have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday morning bright and early at 9 a.m. Myself and Steven Big Beat Orr will break down everything you need to know going into your trading week. Thank you so much.